is just fantastic. Captain's log, subdates 220215.3. The drilling regimen is quite unpopular with the inmates, which I consider good, as I don't want them to be happy, as it defeats the point of punishment and rehabilitation. But those that are themselves health freaks will be fattened up and reconditioned and then put through this process all over again once their laziness kicks in. Welcome everyone to the halls of injustice. Today we welcome inmate number 115 to the ISO cubes. His name is Phillip Carey. He will be serving a considerably long time here in the ISO cubes for a crime that, quite frankly, is an abuse of position along with many other abuses, which we are going to go into. And yes, they are dark, so expect a trigger warning at the relevant point. As Phillip Carey worked in the sector of care, I thought I'd start by talking about that first. The sector of care is one of the most overworked and underpaid sectors of employment. Many politicians talk about it on a semi-regular basis, as a means of trying to make it seem like they care about the carers. Nothing ends up happening in the United Kingdom especially, and those workers are still overworked and underpaid, and highly unappreciated. Workers are under tremendous pressure and stresses. Mental health for people that work within this field goes through pains and trials that many of us in other sectors cannot fathom. Everyone in any field of employment, though, needs an outlet for their pains, their stresses, their trials. Some take up boxing or going to the gym. Some paint, they sing, play video games, etc., i.e. take up hobbies of some kind. Others, though, have it boil up inside of them until this poison manifests because it becomes a poison inevitably, as something truly horrifying. And it is with this in mind, we now need to talk about who Phillip Carey is. Phillip Carey is a 48-year-old man from Blackpool. He did have a nickname. It was Phillip Pac-Man Carey. I know, like Manny Pacquiao. Wow! Beyond that, though, all articles that reference him, and they are all linked down below, there are 7 in total, they do not go into his career or life history. I even went and found his Facebook, which I'm not linking, because there's no point. Beyond a profile picture, there is very little information on that Facebook page that would give me anything to indicate how long he worked in the field of care, beyond life event of 2017 as a first aider. But we can assume that because one of the residents at that care home suffered with a mental health condition, that he had experience of dealing with those kinds of people. I make it seem like they're lesser, I don't mean it that way. So he would surely, because of the conditions some of those residents had, the one that we're going to talk about today is the victim of the crime, in fact, committed by Phillip Carey, he has experience in this field, which does mean then he is at least specially trained. Which means as we have very little information to go on, we should instead dive straight in to the crimes of Phillip Carey. And yes, consider this a trigger warning. Owing to a lack of information from every source I have provided, it is unknown just how long exactly the violations were going on for before Phillip Carey was arrested, but owing to a substantial list of charges, this was hardly a one-time incident. The victim is going to be known as Jane Doe for the remainder of this video, is a 99-year-old at the time of the crime that suffers with dementia, and over a period of time, Phillip Carey decided to sexually assault Jane Doe on multiple occasions while he was meant to be caring for her. As the violations increased in number, Jane Doe started to distance herself from her family, owing to a number of reasons. One, poor health was playing a factor. The other was fear that if she said anything, Phillip Carey might do something to her. It is not alluded to in any article as to whether or not he was threatening her life. It is likely because of how big a man he is, coupled with her age and her health, she was intimidated into silence, while he continued to violate her. We also don't know when this took place. No article specifies a year for it, but as the family were able to visit, this either predates COVID or happened very recently, because as the family were visiting, they noticed something was wrong. They noticed they were being pushed away, and it was when Jane Doe said 7 words that the family spurred into action. those 7 words were "don't leave me, they will hurt me." As what they did next, the family that is, leads to the arrest of Phillip Carey, perhaps we should go to the arrest and the charges, as there are a few of them to go through. Because the alarm bells had been rung, the family decided to take action covertly by not telling anyone at the care home what they intended to do next, so as to best find out the root of the problem and then take necessary action to protect Jane Doe. So what they did was invest in a security camera, which they then inserted and installed covertly into Jane Doe's room. With that installed, they then went home and waited, while watching the camera to see if anything happened. And because criminals are stupid, it didn't take long, because Phillip Carey continued to violate Jane Doe. But this time, he was seen on a camera via a live feed by family members who I don't think were prepared for that. Although based on this picture that he posted to his Facebook, I'm wondering if he got that from Jane Doe. So while the violation was taking place, the family made a very swift phone call to the police, who then went to 2 locations. One was to the care home to arrest Phillip Carey. The other was to the home of the family who had the security camera footage, because that evidence was very much required. Phillip Carey was arrested and charged with 3 things. The first charge was rape. The second, sexual activity with a person with a mental disorder impeding choice. And the third, sexual activity in the presence of a person with a mental disorder by a care worker, which is contrary to Section 40, Part 1 of the Sexual Offences Act of 2003. All 3 charges, in fact, fall under the Sexual Offences Act of 2003, and that is what I'm now going to directly cite before we proceed any further. For the charge of rape, a person commits an offence if A. He intentionally penetrates the vagina, anus or mouth of another person, B. with his penis, B. does not consent to the penetration, and C. A. does not reasonably believe that B consents. 2. Whether a belief is reasonable is to be determined having regard to all circumstances, including any steps A. has taken to ascertain whether B consents. 3. Sections 75 and 76 apply to an offence under this section. And 4. A person guilty of an offence under this section is liable on conviction on indictment to imprisonment for life. Section 32 references a person with a mental disorder impeding choice. 1. A person, A, commits an offence if A. he intentionally causes or incites another person to engage in an activity, that person being B. B. the activity is sexual. C. B is unable to refuse because of or for a reason related to a mental disorder. And D. A knows or could reasonably be expected to know that B has a mental disorder, and that because of it, or for a reason related to it, B is likely to be unable to refuse. 2. B is unable to refuse if A. he lacks the capacity to choose whether to agree to engaging in the activity caused or incited, or B. he is unable to communicate such a choice to A, with the sentence being up to life in prison. The final charge is engaging in sexual activity in the presence of a person with a mental disorder impeding choice. A person A commits an offence if A. he intentionally engages in activity, B. the activity is sexual, C. for the purpose of obtaining sexual gratification he engages in it, 1. when another person, B, is present or is in a place from which A can be observed, and 2. knowing or believing that B is aware, or intending that B should be aware that he is engaging in it. D. B is unable to refuse because of or for a reason related to a mental disorder. And E. A knows or could reasonably be expected to know that B has a mental disorder, and that because of it, for a reason related to it, B is likely to be unable to refuse, with the sentence for this being up to 10 years. So with that all in mind, let's go to the trial of Phillip Carey. Phillip Carey was presented with the evidence, which included the camera footage and the forensic evidence gathered from Jane Doe, and Phillip Carey pleaded guilty to all 3 charges. By the way, based on UK law, it could well impact the sentence and reduce it, but as I know the sentence, it is a debatable aspect. Because of Phillip Carey's guilty plea, we are going to go from this straight to sentencing, but without a cutaway because this segment is quite short. Phillip Carey, aka inmate number 115, found guilty of rape, sexual activity with a person with a mental disorder impeding choice, and sexual activity in the presence of a person with mental disorder by a care worker, was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum tariff falling handily in line with the third charge, which is their maximum sentence for the third charge of 10 years, before being eligible for parole. We here at the Halls of Injustice of course disagree with that aspect entirely, and firmly believe his sentence of life should be life, with immediate castration, akin to that of the Nullo cult. Shortly after sentencing, the senior prosecutor Sophie, whose unpronounceable last name I'm not even going to try and pronounce, said Carey abused his position of trust and targeted a vulnerable woman who he should have been caring for. I hope today's sentence provides them, the family, with some comfort, knowing Carey has been brought to justice for his actions. The family, after this, had said that it was a very distressing experience for all the family as they struggled to come to terms with what had happened. Our elderly relative has gone through a horrific ordeal at the hands of someone we trusted to care for her. We had noticed her behavior had changed. She became withdrawn, wouldn't hug or kiss us, and she didn't want us to go when we were leaving. And on a couple of occasions, she said things that would worry us, suggesting she would be punished. We were concerned that maybe someone was being unkind or too rough with her, so we decided to install a hidden camera in her room so we could see what was happening. Phillip Carey deserves the sentence he got. It is justice by the definitions of the laws of this land. And as we are done, I would very much like to know what you think about this. So please do let me know in the comments down below. If you did enjoy the video, even with the darker tones, please smash the like, leave the obligatory comment, and share the video about, as it really helps this channel. I do hope you all have a wonderful day, and thank you all very much for listening. Ta-ta.